So welcome back. We are to identify the following point from these two functions. So the first thing we need to know is that we have to find the horizontal, vertical, if they have slant, if they have hole, and discontinuity. So how do we do that? Let's start from horizontal. So for horizontal, you are going to look at this, the degree of the numerator, compare it to the degree, highest degree of the numerator. So if you look at this function, the highest degree here is 2, and highest degree on the numerator is also 2. However, in the second function, the highest degree is 1 for the numerator and highest degree is 2 for the denominator. So if the two degrees are the same, so let's say the degree of denominator is 2 and degree of, let me just put it like this, degree of numerator equals degree of denominator. So if they equal, then your horizontal asymptote will now be the coefficient of the first term, which is x squared. So we now have coefficient of x squared here over the coefficient of the other one of numerator. Then our horizontal, let me write it this way, horizontal asymptotes will now be equals to 2. All right, and that's it for this. Then let's talk about the vertical asymptote. So the vertical asymptote, we take the denominator and equate it to 0. So we have vertical asymptotes, which is going to be x squared minus 4, okay, equals 0. So we can now say this is the same thing as x minus 2 and x plus 2 equals 0. So this is also something like difference of two squares. So we now say that x equals to 2 and x equals negative 2. So this is our vertical asymptotes, okay? So it's x equals to, I'm just repeating, it's x equals negative 2. So that is for our vertical asymptote. So since we have horizontal, vertical, definitely we will not have slant, okay? We don't have slant asymptote. So let's talk about hole. Okay, so we will get hole if we are able to factor. For instance, let's say the factor of our first term here, the factor of the numerator is going to give you, let's say, 2x squared plus 3 equals 0. So now I have 2x equals negative 3. Sorry, 2x squared. So we now have x squared equals negative 3 over 2, right? So if you want to factor for x, plus or minus square root of negative 3 over 2. So this is going to give us imaginary number, right? It's going to give us imaginary number. So because there's an imaginary number, so there is no hole, okay? But we are going to solve a question where you see how to get a hole from this. But since we cannot factor the numerator and factor the denominator, then cancel. So it is when we cancel those factors that we cancel, that is where we are going to derive our holes from, okay? So in this function, we don't have hole, okay? So there's no hole there. Let me clean this. So for the discontinuity, it's also the same thing as our vertical asymptotes, and that's how to do this question. So for the second question, okay, let me stand this way. For this second question, what we are going to do is, let's just factor this out first. So we say 2x minus 5 equals, if we factor this, we have x and x. So we are going to get plus 3 minus 2. Okay, so this is our f of x. All right, so now when we look at it, we discover that the degree of numerator is less than the degree of the denominator. So in that case, where the numerator's degree is less than the denominator, we say that our horizontal asymptote equals 0. So y equals 0, and this at this case. Okay, so let's talk about the vertical asymptotes. So for vertical asymptotes, we have x plus 3 and x minus 2 equals 0. So now I have x equals negative 3 and x equals 2. Okay, so these are the vertical asymptotes. All right, so what about slant? So we don't have slant because we have horizontal asymptotes. So what about holes? Okay, for the holes, did we cancel anything out from this function? No, so we did not cancel anything. So we don't have common factors. So no, no whole, none, or you say no whole, then our discontinuity is the same thing as -3 and 2.